Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox, and you know that because it says it on my shirt. Hey, I'm going to talk today about first world problems, a phrase my son introduced me to. You know, it's like, oh no, the big game's coming on TV and the TV doesn't work, cable's out, first world problems. Those are only problems in the first world because the rest of the world doesn't have the ability to even deal with that, so they don't care. I remember Y2K. My wife and I were preppers before Y2K, but we were those preppers who were in the shadows and didn't tell anybody and didn't talk to anybody about it. And then I got on some websites, and it was probably a function of the internet was coming into maturity in the late 90s. But we got on some websites, joined some forums, started hanging out electronically with people and discussing things. And then we actually met on several occasions, people that we'd gotten together with on the internet. We'd go do things and, so on. And so during Y2K, although my wife and I had always been preppers, we ramped up like many people did. And I remember on all the forums and talking to people and things, how all these people were consumed with the idea of toilet paper. They were storing it in their attics, and they were telling other people, be careful that the mice don't get it. And they were talking about, I'm running out of space to store all my toilet paper, and dun 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 dun. And I laughed, and my wife laughed. I was in special forces at the time, and here's these people preparing for what was anticipated to be possibly the end of civilization as we know it. And one of the things that consumed their thought process was wiping their butt. First world problem. Right? There's still a lot of y'all that are overly concerned with toilet paper. I'm not saying it's not important. I have a fair amount set aside. I definitely don't have a lifetime supply of it set aside. Why? Because it takes up a lot of space, and if it gets wet or mice get into it or something, it's just a mess. And because it's a first world problem. There's a lot of things you can do to wipe your butt that don't involve toilet paper. You'll be okay. You'll live. I promise. I recently did a series of posts and videos and things like that on medical. And amongst those, I was talking about setting up the Shofar Mountain Clinic, field hospital, whatever. And a lot of people gave well-meaning advice based on things they were thinking about. And it was clear to me, and again, if you get offended and take this personally and run off and quit, okay, bye, because that's not how it's intended, right? But a lot of people were suggesting things and like, make sure you do this, you really need this. That was kind of like the tone that I was picking up from it, and it was all first world problems. It was clear to me, probably great that these people had never been in the third world ever, that they had certainly never dealt with medical things in the third world. How do I want to say this next part? There is nothing wrong at all. Matter of fact, lots right with trying to do the best you can with what you got where you're at. And right now we're here, 21st century, where all y'all have electricity. Heck, I have electricity, and all these things. And so, yes, let's do all these different things based on what we can access today. And I support that to the degree that it doesn't totally cloud one's thinking when all of this goes away. I'm setting up a field clinic, field hospital, aid station, more than an aid station, with the thought towards the end of the world as we know it. There are no services out there. There's nothing. Because if there is, we're going to avail ourselves of it. Nobody's coming to the Shofar Mountain Clinic when there's an urgent care clinic 15 minutes down the road, right? I mean, that's just dumb. We're not going to do that. I am not suturing anybody up when there's an open medical facility with real doctors and nurses and staff at it, right? Just not going to do it. Some of y'all may disagree with that, and that's fine. But the reason I'm setting up this clinic is for when there is nothing else. And so some of the suggestions to me were totally focused on things are like they are now. They're not going to be. And things that you must have. You must do this and you must have that. I have been in field hospitals that were used by indigenous peoples. In one case, it was a thatched roof built out of bamboo on a slab of concrete. And there were desks and bamboo mat partitions and things like that. And that was all that was available for 100 miles, probably not 100 miles, probably 50 miles around. And people got treated there effectively. If you're interested in this at all, and now I'm probably going to go do something else that just popped in my head. Read about Doctors Without Borders, MSF. There's some good books out there on it, and if I was at my library right now, I'd pull them off and show them to you. MSF is the real name. Doctors Without Borders is an international organization, but it's French. It's French-based, and so it's like Médecins Sans Frontières or something like that. Doctors Without Borders. But it's called MSF in the lingo. And these are people who have earned my respect, and they are trained medical professionals. And the ones I read about were almost all Americans who have a practice. You know, let's say I'm a GP, or I'm a surgeon, or I'm a nurse at the hospital, the regional hospital. And I decide I'm taking 6 months off and I'm going to Sierra Leone to provide what care I can. And these people tell these stories, and there's pictures where this building right here is awesome in some cases compared to what they get to work with, and how they show up and they have this period when on their first tour with MSF, Doctors Without Borders, where it's just like brain numbing, because in America we order tests, and probably in Western culture, Western civilization, somebody comes in, we order tests on everything. At least in America we do, and a lot of that is not just trying to gouge more money out of the system, it's also being afraid of being sued because you didn't test for this. So they order unnecessary tests. Things go to labs, things go here. We have so many supplies that we just use and get, and it's just not a problem. Over there, you've got a Foot Locker of stuff, and you have 200 people lined up waiting to see you, and you have a Foot Locker full of stuff, and you're sitting on a cot. Next, bad tooth. Next, horrible infected foot. Next, broken humerus. Next, you got a Foot Locker. You do the best you can with what you got where you're at. And they learn a lot. Yes, ideally you have everything possible that it makes it look like a regional trauma center. But one, I can't afford that. Two, most of y'all can't either. And three, I just want to be able to do the best I can with what I got. So, thinking on that and kind of segueing a little bit, when I was in the military, when I was in Special Forces, I went to some training on survival medicine. And this was dealing with, and preventing is huge, medical situations when you have nothing. When you are a POW in some jungle POW camp. When you are out there on the run and you don't even have your Line 2 gear anymore. And stuff happens. how do you take care of that? We covered things like maggot therapy, using urine, just all kinds of things. And of course, everything's testable. And I remember the foot stomp. In the military, I don't know if civilians do this. In the military, when someone's given a block of instruction and they stomp their foot twice like that, that means you better write this down and you better remember it because you're going to see it again on the test. And in fact, the question was something like, what is the most important aspect of survival medicine? Okay, the course is survival medicine. This is a pretty important question, right, on the test. What is the most important part of survival medicine? Proper personal hygiene. That's the answer. Proper personal hygiene. It's huge. Americans are pretty clean people. If you look internationally, we bathe a lot. Not as much as the Thais, but we bathe a lot. We're pretty clean. We don't like stinky, right? It offends us as Americans. Maybe not you, but as Americans. And so, to a degree, I think we take personal hygiene for granted. Personal hygiene is important because preventing disease and infection and stuff is so much better than dealing with it and treating it, especially when you're, using your Shofar Mountain Clinic or your Gorilla Hospital out in the middle of nowhere, Philippines, or something like that. Let's try to not let people get sick and injured and infected and that kind of thing. And so simple things like washing your hands. Washing your hands is important. You should wash your hands frequently. You don't need to use germicidal soap. You can just use warm water and soap, which means, we need to have warm water and soap. Which is why I did a video recently on you should stock a lot of soap. I know you can make it. You can't make enough. And when you're making that soap, you're not doing something else. Soap is cheap. Buy soap. That's a hint for a hit for a video we just did, 5 videos ago or something. You should have a lot of soap and you should use it. Every time you go to the bathroom, you should wash your hands. Before you sit down to eat, you should wash your hands. Before you deal with another person's injury, you should wash your hands. To the extent that you can. You do the best you can with what you got where you're at, but most of the time, most people can do better with what they have where they're at, right? Granted, if we're under fire and dunk, 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 and this guy's spurting blood, all right, I got to deal with that with these hands, right? Cool. But most of the time, you can do better. Proper personal hygiene. Proper disposal of human waste is huge. It's huge. Backpackers know how to do it. They should. But that's on a small scale where you're moving. What about when people live here? There's no Don's John. There's no porta potty sucking machine, SST. What a horrible job, right? They make a lot of money. None of that's happening. Your toilet is not going to flush. It might. If you're on a septic tank, and you can get water, which you can continue to use that, which is why I'm a firm believer of those of you with septic tanks, you should have them pumped fairly regularly so that you're always starting from a good position. It's cheap and easy to do now. You don't want to do that after the balloon goes up, if you know what I mean. But you got to think about that, human waste. You got to think about food waste, and washing dishes without whatever you use now to wash dishes. You don't want to eat off of dirty dishes. You don't want to, so you want to keep your body clean, not just your hands, but you want to keep your body clean. It prevents rashes and infections and all kinds of things. So you have to be able to bathe. You have to be able to dispose of human waste. You have to be able to properly cook and deal with the dishes and clean up after food. Water is huge. You have to have clean water. And again, these are all, 4-hour blocks of instruction in themselves, how to do all those things. But do you know how to wash dishes? The 3-pot method? It's a tried and true method. The Army used to use it. When I first came in the Army, we actually had mess kits. I know, I'm old. And there was a way they'd have these 3 pots and immersion heaters, and basically they were 55-gallon drums, and you would clean your dishes that way. Did the same thing in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, 3 pots. I wrote about it in my book. Here comes a shameless plug. I really need a copy to hold up. I didn't know I was going to do it though. Survivalist Family, Prepared Americans for a Strong America, available at fine bookstores everywhere. If you order it, I suggest Barnes & Noble. You'll get it a lot faster. But I talk about the 3-pot method there. It's a tried and true way of cleaning dishes. If you haven't done it, cook dinner for your family and then take everything and go out in the backyard and figure out how you're going to clean it. You can't use your hose. It doesn't work anymore, right? And then people say, well, that's why I stock paper plates. That's good for a 2-week power outage. What about a 20-year, or there's never anything coming back anymore? In Asia, many people eat in restaurants off of banana leaves. Banana leaf makes a fine plate. And when you're done, you throw it away. Don't have banana leaves here. So proper personal hygiene is important. And good books, man, this could turn into stomping the ground and it's shaking. This could turn into a book review. Where There Is No Doctor. That's a good book. Where There Is No Doctor. A Barefoot Doctor's Manual. I believe that was put out by the Communist Chinese. It's also a good book. A lot of what they both talk about is proper personal hygiene. You go into these villages where people just don't understand. It is not good for your kid to stay filthy with open bug bites on him or her. They get infested. They get infected, they pus, and they get bigger, and that turns into other problems, which you could have prevented by giving your kid a bath before you put them to bed at night. Things like that. So proper personal hygiene is huge, but for a lot of people, especially Westerners, I think you really need to think that through. What's proper personal hygiene going to look like when all you have is what you have and where you are? What's that look like? All right, first world problems. To the extent that you can, yeah, deal with them, no problem. But don't let that cloud your thinking when you're plopped down into a totally different situation. What's your plan then? See, that's kind of like that phrase, which I don't like it because it's so passé, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. There's a lot to that. It's why I did a video a long time ago where I said I was going to try and do bushcraft. I just got too caught up in stuff. I still intend to do it. I bought a lot of stuff to do it. I bought stuff to do bushcrafting. Yeah, there's another whole video. But having the skills to deal well when you have nothing, that helps when you have something, right? Knowing how to, right now I'm wearing a pair of shorts, pair of running shoes, nice shirt, but I have a knife. I didn't set this up. I have my shorts gun. Do I have a lighter? Man, I better have a lighter. No, I don't think I do. I have a carpenter pencil though, and with this I can make fire. I should have a lighter, right? If I had my lighter and my knife and my handgun, I could do a lot of things really fast, no problem. I can make fire without a lighter, but it's fixing to rain. There's thunder in the outside, and that's no bueno. You don't want to have to do that, right? But knowing how, then when I have a lighter and I have a can of diesel and, you know, it's like fire's no problem if you know how to do it. Same thing with medical stuff. If you know how to take care of yourself when you have nothing, then having anything is cool. Which doesn't mean, well, then I'm not going to buy anything. It's like the people who start out with their plan, all I'm going to do is take my bushcraft kit and go off into the woods. That's how I'm going to survive Tiawaki. That's dumb. You should use all the assets you have available. Just be ready to deal when you don't have those assets. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm being a little bit whatever. All right, first world problems. Try to see through it. What are you really preparing for? honestly, what I'm preparing for, which is not the same thing as me forecasting, okay? But what I'm preparing for is life to go back to like it was in the 1800s. Now, many of us know a lot more than people did in the 1800s. Many of us know a lot less. Really? You know? But I'm in my mind, I'm saying, all right, 1800s, because 1800s, they really didn't have a whole lot. And I'm thinking 1800s out away from, you know, Boston and, you know, the cities and stuff. Frontier style living. That's what I'm kind of picturing. I'm picturing everything stops and what we have is what we have, and we're not getting anything else. Nothing. So now what do you do? If you don't have a doctor, you're not getting a doctor. If you don't have plants growing, you're not getting any plants until you figure out how to eat wild plants. You know, that whole thing. Everything stops. Now what do you do? That's what I'm planning for. I hope that never happens. But if it does, mentally, emotionally prepared. What about you? Don't stress on first world problems. Think it through. What are you going to do when you're in Zimbabwe? Move! All right. I'll see you out there.